Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our summer series webinar on desert conservation. My name is Olivia Burns. I am an environmental specialist with Clark County's Office of Sustainability, supporting the All in Clark County initiative. Joining us today is Audrey Locke, the Public Education and Outreach Coordinator for Clark County's Desert Conservation Program. Before I pass it over to Audrey to tell us all about desert habitat and conservation efforts, I will share a few tips to enhance your presentation experience and navigate this website. Firstly, you can translate the entire meeting page and or the live audio into another language by clicking the Translate button and selecting a language from the Translate drop-down menu. Closed captions are also available for this presentation by clicking the CC button on the bottom right corner of the presentation page. Viewers may call in to hear audio, text and comments, or leave a voicemail by dialing the 855 number located just above the presentation page. Another way to interact is by putting comments and questions in the chat box next to the presentation live stream. So if you think of a question during the presentation, please put them there and we will have time to review those at the end. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on the Clark County's Department of Environment and Sustainability YouTube channel afterwards. Lastly, if you have any difficulties viewing or hearing the presentation at any time, please refresh the meeting page. Now I will pass it over to Audrey to get us started. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to sharing a little about our desert conservation program with you. If we will just give me 1 second. There we go. So Clark County Desert Conservation Program is a division of the Department of Environment and Sustainability. And we manage the Federal Endangered Species Act compliance on behalf of the municipalities throughout Clark County, including the Department of Transportation. Give you just a little bit of history and some background so you know why we're here and how we got here. In 1990, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service did an emergency listing of the desert tortoise. And in that emergency listing, it caused the Clark County development to be stopped. So it was a shock to the community, and it was a time where it had a serious impact on the local development within Clark County. As a result of that, we were able to come to a compromise through a series of events that enabled us to continue construction, but also to protect the threatened species that had been emergency listed. So it was suddenly illegal to develop in an area where tortoises may be impacted, and it resulted in a complete shutdown of all new construction. The construction projects around the valley were basically abandoned, and of course, this threatened our local economy. And some entities took action by suing the Fish and Wildlife Service to overturn the listing. And that lawsuit was lost, and the subsequent appeal was lost as well. However, Clark County decided to go a different route, and they wanted us to get back to business. And so what they did was found a solution that turned out to be something called a Section 10 incidental take permit. The permit is allowed under the Endangered Species Act, and it was the compromise that we needed to allow development to move forward and still address the needs to protect the threatened species. Since the initial listing of the desert tortoise, Clark County has applied for 3 of these incidental take permits. One in 91 was just short term, basically covered the desert tortoise. In 95, again, it was one species, the desert tortoise. And then in 2001, the multiple species habitat conservation plan was implemented. And basically, in layman's terms, the incidental take permit allowed developers to continue developing while creating a funding source for conservation efforts. And so for every acre of land that's developed, A fee is paid to the Desert Conservation Program, and this money is used to administer the Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan, and it allows us to conserve certain areas and manage them for the sole purpose of protecting the threatened and endangered species of animals and plants that are listed. It also allows for uninterrupted development of a project on private land. So construction personnel can call our wild tortoise hotline if they encounter a tortoise on their site, and our team comes out and picks them up, safely and securely moves them. And we usually do that within 24 hours. What this process does is it prevents the shutdown of a project and still ensures the safety and protection of the tortoise. The permit that allows us to do this is issued by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and it is in accordance with the Endangered Species Act. And I do need to note here that we do not pick up pet or desert tortoises. That is a common question. That is not something that is within our permit or our purview. The current permit that we have expires in 2031. So, pardon me. Under the Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan, again, 78 species, including 4 that are currently listed under the Endangered Species Act, are covered. And those 4 are the federally threatened desert tortoise, the yellow-billed cuckoo, which is a bird, an endangered southwest willow flycatcher, another bird, and the Mount Charleston blue butterfly. Our key goals for the Desert Conservation Program are to ensure the survivability of the covered species in the wild. Now, many people share with me when I'm out in the community that they are owners or caregivers for pet tortoises. I want to emphasize that what our program does is protect wild animals and wild desert tortoises. There are an abundance of pet tortoises out there, and actually backyard breeding is a challenge for us. It's not something that we encourage or think is a good thing. That does not help our wild population, because those wild tortoises those pet tortoises cannot be released into the wild. So please, if you have pet tortoises or know somebody who has pet tortoises, share that information with them. Anyway, we do ensure the survivability and covered species in the wild. We administer the Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan to ensure the compliance. And also, we balance the protection, conservation, and progress of our community. We need to ensure that habitat disturbance is balanced with conservation. So the currently listed species, there's 15 reptiles and amphibians, 8 birds, 4 mammals, 10 invertebrates, and 41 plants. We're working to amend this list so that it better reflects the current status of species in Clark County that are most likely impacted by private development. And once that's approved, we expect to be a little closer to 30 to 35 species protected. So ensuring the survivability of covered species in the wild takes a lot of different pronged approach. Research, acquisition of sensitive habitats, habitat restoration, public information and education, wild tortoise assistance line, and installing the maintenance of fencing along roadways. So within our group, the Desert Conservation Program, we do all of these things. Many of those items are done by contractors, and we manage those contracts internally. Administering the MSHCP, again, allows for those private landowners to develop, but through a streamlined process. So we make sure that they are in compliance with the Endangered Species Act, but we don't have full shutdowns of projects like we experienced back when this first started. It also offers a coordinated decision-making process so that we don't have habitat loss at the rate that we were having, and it provides the community with long-term planning assurances. So for the properties that are developed, we have a counterbalance with some properties that are conserved, with areas that are conserved and managed by us. Again, our goal is to balance protection, conservation, and progress. I often tell the little kids when I'm out in the community that Tortoises have habitats, but people need habitats too. So we want to balance the progress and development along with the protection of the natural habitats where those species can continue to live and even thrive. Conservation actions that we take are often not seen by the general public. We have an area out in Boulder City. Many people don't know that it even exists, but it's about 86,000 acres that we manage specifically for the conservation and preservation of the desert tortoise species and the wildlife that's out there. We also have riparian areas, primarily along the Muddy River and the Virgin River, and those are intended to preserve natural habitats for birds in the area. We used to have birds that would naturally migrate there, but because of invasive species or just lack of habitat growth, they stopped migrating to the area. And through our efforts, we are bringing some of those back. And in some areas, in some instances, the damage in the areas caused the birds to leave altogether. And obviously, we want to have that natural migration. And so we are working to get that back. Since landscapes, habitats, and species are continually experiencing significant changes, administering conservation has to include a management component that is able to change with current circumstances. So in other words, we need to be flexible to stay relevant. It also means that that what we have learned, we need to use for planning for the future. We don't have just a static conservation plan. We make sure that it's adaptive and is used for direct changes for future actions. A variety of subject matter experts make up our Science Advisory Council, or our Science Advisory Panel, and they independently review and implement the Clark County MSHCP. We host an annual symposium for our contractors to present their findings from various research projects conducted throughout the year, and this is attended by our Science Advisor Panel members, researchers, students, county staff, and the general public. Our engagement and education is one of the main components that we use to get this information out to our community. We participate in a variety of outreach efforts, and we have a very robust program out in our elementary schools and are working to expand that into our junior high and high school. I'm not going to lie, we have a mascot, and that definitely gets us invited to a lot more parties. And we enjoy getting invites from our community in general. The message taken into the schools, scout groups, civic groups, and off-road enthusiasts and construction workers is respect, protect, and enjoy our desert. There is also a chance that if you have met me in person and stood in front of me for more than 90 seconds, you also got that speech, because that is something that all of us on our team like to talk about, respect, protect, and enjoy. And there are some ways you can do that, primarily for our general public, because much of what we do is scientific research and implementation of federal rules and laws. The general public can help us by volunteering for some of our outreach efforts. So how can you go all in is a question that we were asked to answer, and that was basically educate yourself and your family, invite us to give tortoise talks to your group, classes, or scout troops, and you can volunteer to the max. Our volunteers assist with the desert cleanup. They participate in our outreach events, including education tables and giving tortoise talks to groups throughout Clark County. We've even had some people volunteer to photograph our events for us so that we could use that media for future posts in our social media platform. We also participate in scheduled events, and we can use people at any time to do setups and teardowns, events, support, material handout, and so forth. If you want to become a MAX volunteer, I'm going to leave this up here for a couple of seconds so that you can capture that. You can also go to our website at MojaveMax.com and click on the volunteer tab to learn more about becoming a MAX volunteer. I am actually leaving a little more time for some questions because we tend to get a couple technical questions that might take a little while. So Olivia, just so you know, I am leaving, I'll be wrapping up in a few minutes and then leaving some extra time for some questions. If you'd like to learn and keep abreast of what we're doing in the community, you can always follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Thread, YouTube. We have a Mojave Max page and also DCP platform. And if any of you have never been lucky enough to see a wild tortoise out in the desert, this is, for your viewing pleasure, Mojave Max, who is our mascot. He lives out at the Springs Preserve, and he's just out doing his thing. I do want to emphasize, again, pet tortoises should never be released into the wild. They cannot survive, and you may never take a wild tortoise from the desert. That actually is against the law. That is covered by the Endangered Species Act. So we don't want anyone getting in trouble out there. And if you've never seen a tortoise eat, I'm sorry to say, this is probably one of the cutest things that I have on video. I do want to also let you know that tortoises are a keystone species, and they influence the ecosystem more than other species. This is why it is so important for us to protect them and to manage that conservation plan. Other species will use their burrows, the tortoise burrows, including burrowing owls, lizards, roadrunners, ground squirrels. That is why they are so important to the ecosystem. Olivia, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions at this point because I imagine we have tons of them out there.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much, Audrey, for sharing all about the unique challenges and opportunities facing the Mojave Desert and desert tortoises. I really love the videos of our favorite friend, Mojave Max. So I will pull up the audience questions. All right. First question is, what role do local conservation organizations play in supporting county conservation efforts?
Well, we partner with many organizations and consulting firms and researchers to make sure that we have the most current information that's out there, the most relevant and current science to base our decisions and our actions on. And again, through our outreach efforts and through our education efforts, we are always seeking other groups to become engaged with us. I feel that education is one of the best ways for us to change behaviors throughout our community. And there are so many different layers of what we do. It's hard to sum it all up and bring it all into one conversation. So I like to leave that door open for anybody who is interested in getting to know more about desert conservation and their efforts. But we do get a lot of information and input from a wide variety of community partners and consultants and other agencies. And again, remember that the Desert Conservation Program manages this on behalf of all of the municipalities within Clark County. So if there's a development or anything that's being done within the city of Las Vegas or North Las Vegas, that all falls under the umbrella of the Desert Conservation Program.
Great, thank you, Audrey. Another question is, can you highlight some of the volunteer opportunities for residents to participate?
Sure, we have our desert cleanups. We do at least 2 of those a year. Those are something we've started recently, and they've been primarily focused on the acreage out in Boulder City, where we do have our habitat conservation area for the desert tortoises. And I should note that When we have tortoises that are picked up off of a construction site, they are quarantined for a while, given a health check, make sure that they do not carry a particular respiratory disease that could be fatal to our wild population. Once they are cleared medically, then they are translocated out into this easement area that we manage just to live out their lives as a wild tortoise and do what they do. We also have quite a few opportunities to be at outreach events where we have people that we will train to learn to give either a tortoise talk or to work an education table with us, and they can go out and represent the DCP and share our message that respect, protect, and enjoy our desert. We are also starting to work with other agencies that are needing desert cleanup areas that are not necessarily under our purview, but they need volunteers to help us in those areas. So we expect to be adding more volunteer opportunities to be out into those cleanups. And we have in the past had opportunities where we have areas that may have been damaged by off-road vehicles. We are noticing a lot more damage by off-road bikes, like dirt bikes, and also by mountain bikers that are not staying on the trails. And that is one of our main messages when we get out with the kiddos and in our off-road community is to stay on the trails, because anytime you venture off of a trail, you are damaging not only potentially the burrows that the animals live in, but also the vegetation that they eat. So we've had opportunities to do some restoration projects. We did some vertical restoration and some planting in areas that were damaged by off-road activities. And we will always share those with our volunteer groups emails. So we do an email whenever we have anything that's going on, and we also post that on our social media. So there's two ways to be informed of those things.
Great. Thank you. We have two more questions for you today. You mentioned where contractors could come and tell them about key findings from their studies. So someone's asking if there are any recent key finding studies for Mojave Desert biodiversity.
Oh, that tends to be on the more technical side of the questions. And what I can tell you is that all of the presentations that were given at our symposium last year and the one that's coming up again this year in a couple of weeks are on our website. So the Clark County website, under the Department of Environment and Sustainability, we have the Desert Conservation Program pages, and within that you can go to the symposia page and pull up all of the presentations that were given. So yes, there are always key findings that we rely on in making decisions moving forward, but we are very transparent about what we receive on that, and we do post all of those on our website.
Thank you, Audrey, for sharing where we can find those presentations. And the last question we have for you is, which events can we see Mojave Max mascot at?
Oh, well, Max gets around. He's primarily at our school assemblies, which are within our elementary schools. So those are specific when we're invited to those. Max is often invited to go to events that are sponsored by our county commissioners. So we have been to several of those. His favorite last year was a skate honor and roll, which is something that Commissioner Kirkpatrick did at a roller rink, and Max actually donned some roller skates and really surprised us all. It was great. But anything that is at the Springs Preserve is usually attended by Max as well, since our live Mojave Max lives at Springs Preserve. So you can always also contact me directly, and I would be happy to share with you his calendar coming up. But right now, his calendar is almost exclusive to the school assemblies. And October tends to be a very busy month for us. The first week of October is Desert Tortoise Week. And Max is requested quite a bit in October and throughout the month of October, and also throughout April during Earth Month. He makes most of his appearances in October and April.
Great, super exciting. That'd be so fun to watch Max on some roller skates at the ice rink. But that is it for the questions we have today. So thank you all for joining us and taking the opportunity to learn more about desert conservation and Mojave Max. And a last thank you to Audrey for sharing all these resources with us. Just before we end today's call, I'll go over a few upcoming events that All in Clark County will be at or is hosting. All of our events are on the page you are probably viewing on now. So that's allinclarkcounty.com/events. There you could see our upcoming events. You could see photos of our past ones. You could sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media, all ways to stay updated. But tomorrow we have a very fun ride and drive event for electric vehicles. We host these every once in a while at our department. So this is hosted by All in Clark County and the Southern Nevada Clean Cities Coalition. This is a free and public event, so anybody could come on down to Caesar's Palace tomorrow from 11 to 1. We will be on the 3rd level of the parking garage. We'll be testing different electric vehicles by celebrating Caesar's Palace newly installed charging station. So now on their 3rd level, they have 20 chargers for electric vehicles. So if you're curious, there will be a lot of different car dealerships there, so you could test drive the different ones. There'll be the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association. So these members have been driving EVs for a long time, so they know all the tips and tricks. So come with your questions and your concerns and have some fun test driving the different vehicles. And then next week we have another webinar, and this is for Clark County employees. So I know a lot are on the call today. And this is to continue learning more about sustainability internally and how us as employees can help shape a more sustainable Clark County. And then lastly, thank you again for joining us for our summer series. We are ending the near of it. We have 3 left. So thank you for joining the previous ones. If you haven't seen the previous ones, some of them are available on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and learn more about what the City of Henderson is doing or SNWA. But the next one is on Saturday, August 17th at the Aliante Library. We'll have multiple organizations at this one sharing about different resources for energy efficiency projects and how to save on utility bills. So come join us from 11 to 12, 1 hour of your Saturday with us. We'd really love to see you there. And then you can sign up for the other presentations that are coming up as well for the summer series. And then lastly, we have a Fleet Manager Roundtable. So if you're a fleet manager watching this presentation, we'd love to have you come down to our office to share some best practices for alternative fuels. Again, all these are on allinclarkcounty.com. But that is it for today's presentation. So thank you all for coming on, and we hope to see you tomorrow at Caesar's Palace for our free ride and drive event.